In 2005, a U.S. district court dismissed a class action lawsuit alleging a hub and spoke conspiracy among luxury hotel operators and their revenue management platform, accusing them of using that platform to exchange proprietary demand data and allowing them to charge increased rates for luxury hotel rooms despite historically low overall demand. Now, the case was dismissed, but what's the reality behind how hotels and airlines set their prices? And how are you as a consumer impacted? More importantly, what can you do about it? Welcome back to Unhospitality.
Unhospitality, the #1 podcast in the world.
Hey folks, thanks for joining me for this week's episode of Unhospitality. We're the #1 podcast in the world. And before we begin, if you like the content we share, do us a solid and subscribe to us on your favorite platform. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, there you'll find us. Go and hit subscribe. Your support goes a long way in helping this endeavor grow and reach more people, and I would be grateful. Thank you very much. So, have you ever been on a website searching for a hotel room or for an airline ticket? And as you're searching, you're watching the price increase in front of your very eyes? It's happened to me. In fact, I'll tell you something funny. I've actually had the price increase from the time I hit buy, and then you go through the 5 or 6 pages of rigmarole, the information that they ask you for and ask you if you want all these add-ons, to the time I actually went to purchase. My purchase wouldn't go through, saying that the price that I had started with just 5 minutes earlier was no longer available. And when I went back to refresh the page, sure enough, the price had increased within those 5 minutes. I mean, just think about going to a grocery store, picking up an orange from the fruit stand, and by the time you got to the cash register, the price had gone up. That's essentially what was happening to me as I was trying to buy this particular airline ticket. And it's not happened just once, it's happened many times. Now, we started at the top of the show talking about a case that involved Lowe's Hotels and Amadeus Hospitality and their platform Demand 360. Now, Lowe's wasn't just the only luxury provider that was mentioned in this case, but they were the prominent one. Now, for those who don't know, behind the scenes of every hotel, there's a team that's specifically looking at prices to maximize their revenue at that hotel. Why do you pay $99 on a soft night versus $599 on a night where there's high demand? Well, there's a team behind that that uses very complicated and complex tools to set those pricings. And in this particular case, Amadeus Hospitality, their revenue pricing tool that is used by many hotels is called Demand 360. So in this case, what it essentially did was accused these entities of a hub and spoke antitrust conspiracy. Now, what is a hub and spoke conspiracy in the first place? Good question. Hub and spoke conspiracy is a type of antitrust violation where a central entity, or the hub, coordinates illegal agreements with multiple separate parties, the spokes, often to fix prices or divide markets without the spokes necessarily conspiring directly with each other. It's visualized like a wheel. Think of your bike wheel, right? The hub is connected to all these spokes. The spokes connect vertically with the hub, but the spokes never actually talk to each other. In order to prove that there's actually collusion in these cases, there often has to be a rim, and that rim refers to actually those individual spokes connecting on the outside level to really complete the circle of this information. And that would lead to an alleged conspiracy. Now, again, in this case, against Lowe's and Amadeus, the case was dismissed. But the fact that the case was brought in the first place, alluding that these hotel entities were gathering inside information and without talking to each other, using that information to set higher prices without there being a real demand, got me thinking about how hotels set their prices and how some of this inside information can often lead to increased prices for consumers. Again, the case was dismissed, but it begs an interesting question. At what point does revenue management, with the enhanced tools that are out analyzing even the smartest humans among us, stop being an exercise in staying competitive and cross over into a price gouging mechanism that leaves consumers at the mercy of AI greed machines? Dynamic pricing, also called revenue management, adjusts hotel rooms and flight tickets in real time. Now, it's based on demand, competitor rates, occupancy, events that are going on in your town, and even your own booking behavior. And that's the part that I think scares me the most. And it causes prices to spike or, in some cases, drop visibly sometimes during your searches, which is what I alluded to earlier. Algorithms are tracking factors like your own travel schedule, your own search history, your market surges around you, and they're all doing it to maximize their revenue. Again, I emphasize these machines are a lot smarter than us. Machine learning models are predicting patterns, they're weighing factors dynamically, and they're updating their rates hourly, sometimes even by the minute, often faster than OTAs or websites will ever be able to do. Now, by the way, this isn't just happening in the hospitality space. I saw a video in December by More Perfect Union. They did an investigative report that actually blew my mind. They had 400 people shop for groceries, often in the same store, across the same neighborhood, and they had them buy the exact same thing. Now, these stores had what they call a dynamic pricing model. Have you noticed as you go to supermarkets these days, some of them have switched to that old sticker tape of how much things cost to an actual digital display? Well, that digital display is there on purpose. It's not just for convenience or they're modernizing their machines just for the look or aesthetic of it. They're actually dynamically changing their prices, often by the minute and based upon people's shopping habits. Believe me when I tell you this is a science. They have it down to a science. But this particular study blew my mind in the sense that they had people going by the same things, and depending on their past purchase history, their own economic situation, or the neighborhood that they were actually in, paying for the same exact thing cost wildly different prices. It was crazy that 400 people all sat and bought the same thing and none of them paid the same price. How crazy is that? They're changing prices based upon your own buying habits and access to resources. And to me is absolutely mind blowing and not in a good way. That's kind of scary. Now, human revenue managers are often in the hotel world there to override for nuanced decisions. But we've already talked about in this podcast how thinly stretched a lot of hospitality workers are these days, some covering for one or two people who are down in their office. So, can we really expect that human override is happening in some of these nuanced ways at every point of service or every point of purchase when we as a consumer are hitting that click button to buy? I think not. Now, I want to emphasize there's nothing inherently wrong with revenue management as a discipline. It's a natural flow of economics. It's part of understanding and responding to supply and demand in different market conditions. It's absolutely normal. You're not going to sell a hotel room during the peak of World Cup in your city versus a time when it's in the middle of winter, perhaps in a snow destination that doesn't have any skiing and it's a dead week. You obviously want to be able to activate different price structures according to market conditions, 100%. In fact, this dynamic pricing model and revenue management often favors consumers, just like we talked about. Times where the hotel is slow, you'll get a lower rate. When they know they're trying to fill the hotel at the very last minute, sometimes prices will drop. And if you're booking close in, you can get a spectacular deal. If you know how to search well, there's greater flexibility to find budget friendly options by shopping around and booking strategically around certain events. When you know it's a peak time, try and book around that. There's often transparent pricing on many platforms, trying to build trust and reduce surprises at checkout. Now, what's the case against consumers and how does this hurt people at the point of purchase? Well, price fluctuations can often upset loyal customers who see higher rates for the same room on later visits during peak demands. And they're thinking, what's my loyalty worth in the first place? Why am I going to be paying such a higher price when I'm your loyal customer? Surge pricing during special events or holidays often feels unfair or like they're exploiting urgency and limiting choices that can really have a negative impact on the buying experience. And then the idea that these rapid changes can just literally, your pricing changes as you're purchasing. It's wildly frustrating to someone who's thinking they're getting something for some price. And almost you feel punished by shopping around because these algorithms are seeing how many times you search for a specific flight. And they're saying, well, there must be high interest here and high demand, and this person must really want this flight. So then they start jacking up the price just based upon your own personal searches. That to me seems inherently unfair and gives the impression you're being punished just by being thorough in doing research and triggering multiple searches. So we know a little bit about what the mechanisms behind the scenes. And this is a whole science. I could do an hour podcast on this, and I will be inviting people to talk about this in the future on this show. But I guess Now that we know a little bit behind the scenes, what can we do as consumers to protect ourselves and try and find the better deals, potentially beating the algorithm at their own game? Here are a few helpful tips. Book hotels on Fridays and Saturdays when demand for planning dips down a little bit. You can often find 2 to 6% lower rates on the weekend searches as opposed to early week searches where everyone's in planning mode and starting their week off fresh, thinking about their trips to come. Now, if you have nerves of steel, because this is a risky proposition, but week of bookings often see a decrease as high as 20 to 25% because those hotels haven't filled up, suddenly drop their prices trying to gain the last minute bookers. Now, of course, in high demand cities like New York, Chicago, Miami, LA, et cetera, London, Paris, that might not always be the smartest strategy, but you'd be surprised if you have some flexibility as to what hotel you can go to. That same week search will see a dip in price. As another tip, book far in advance, but book a free cancellation policy so you can lock in early rates and then continue to recheck and rebook if lower rates occur between the time when you booked and when you travel. Now, this one's for the tech savvy. You can actually employ a paid VPN to spoof your IP address and access lower rates targeted at other regions, avoiding location-based markups from repeated searches. Now, you can also clear your cookies, use incognito mode, or switch devices altogether to prevent the algorithms from hiking prices based upon your personal interest signals. Like I said earlier, I've been penalized sometimes by searching on the same computer and watching the price rise because they think I really want that flight. And so they demand a higher price just because they know I'm interested. Compare your OTA sites to the hotel's direct booking engines. It's not uncommon for hotels actually to undercut some of their OTAs to try and build loyalty and drive bookings directly to their websites as opposed to going outside the OTAs. Another thing you can do is trigger price alerts on these aggregator sites for true savings. You know you're interested in a certain destination, trigger a price alert that will notify you when there are deals to that particular destination. Try to test multiple OTAs without logging in. Being incognito in those cases can often help you because they don't recognize your patterns and they're not seeing what you're interested in. Now, again, this one requires nerves of steel, but you can split your stays into multiple shorter reservations to exploit rate drops mid trip. Sometimes your high price you're paying is due to one night that spiked as a high demand night and the rest of the nights are low. If you can use that information to book your hotel strategically and only book on nights when the hotels are low demand, you might save some money there. Now, loyalty programs seem to be getting worse and worse and aren't really rewarding loyalty these days, but it's hard to deny that there still are certain perks to joining loyalty programs, accumulating points, and seeing how those points can benefit you as a consumer with certain perks, freebies, upgrades, etc. And one last key point, as best as you can, try and factor in junk fees. There are often toggles or switches that you can put on these aggregator websites to make sure that the price you're seeing is the price out the door. Make sure you're including your bags that you intend to carry on your flights. Make sure you're including the number of people in your hotel. If they have an option to include for resort fees or taxes, put that toggle there so that you're not being misled by a leader rate. It's almost like a bait and switch where they'll attract you with one rate, and by the time you're paying double the price of what you saw on the initial search there. So make sure you're accounting for those fees when you're doing your search as best as you possibly can. So that's it. A bit of a buzz about what the industry is talking about, how some consumers are trying to push back. It's a very interesting conversation. And as AI and technology continues to advance, I can only see this conversation getting bigger. Where do we as consumers fit in to this entire system that is hell bent on maximizing every penny and every cent? And what are tricks that we can use to use the system itself for our own benefit? I'm really curious as to how you've been impacted by dynamic pricing. If you work in hotels and this is part of your job, or you're just a consumer kind of caught in the crossfire trying to figure out the best way to save money when you travel, I want to hear from you. Reach out in the comments, like and subscribe, help grow this endeavor. I appreciate you guys following along this journey. This is Unhospitality, the number one podcast in the world. And until the next time, guys, safe travels.